The text was never meant for her. Terrence Boone understood that in the second after he hit send. The name at the top of the screen was not Sabrina Kent from payroll. It was Sabrina Kendall, the CEO. The woman whose name was on the building's letterhead, whose portrait hung beside the lobby elevators, and who in 3 years had never once answered a message from anyone below director level. He stared at what he had written. "You can fire me after today, but please advance me 2 weeks of pay." His phone buzzed 40 seconds later. "The amount has been transferred. Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock, my office. Come alone." Terrence set the phone down on top of his daughter's hospital bill and read it again. He had no idea what she wanted from him. He was going to be there anyway. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is where the real stories live, the kind that stay with you after the screen goes dark. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, back to Terrence. Terrence Boone had learned early that a maintenance worker is about as close to invisible as a person gets. They move through buildings before sunrise and after midnight. They fix what is broken before anyone arrives to notice it was ever broken. Same Navy uniform every day, same worn tool belt, same radio crackling without warning. In 3 years at Kendall Dynamics, he had rewired the east stairwell, reprogrammed the 4th floor HVAC, and kept the backup generator alive through 2 separate blackouts. He had also in his first month installed a small offline logger on that generator wired to nothing but itself. Because a building that loses power twice in one winter deserves a record that does not depend on the network. Nobody had asked him to. Nobody had ever asked him about it since. He had never once been invited to use the elevator that needed a key card above the 8th floor. That was fine. He had not taken the job for recognition. He had taken it for the health insurance. His wife Denise had died 4 years earlier from complications after a routine surgery. The kind of thing that should not happen. The kind of thing that does happen when a hospital is understaffed and a patient's post-op vitals are not checked often enough. She was 34. Lena was 8. Terrence had been in the waiting room reading a magazine when a nurse came to find him, and in the 4 years since he had never picked up a magazine in a waiting room again. He closed the small electrical repair shop the two of them had been building together, packed what mattered into a storage unit, and moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side. He found a job with benefits. He learned to cook the 4 meals Lena would actually eat. He went to every parent-teacher conference alone, sat in every pediatric waiting room alone, and paid every bill alone on time, exactly what was owed and nothing more. He did not ask for help. He had not needed to. 3 weeks ago, the specialist sat across from him with the careful expression doctors put on before they say something a patient cannot afford to hear. Lena's hearing loss in the left ear had progressed faster than expected. There was a procedure, a stapedectomy, that could stop it. The window for it was narrow, weeks, not months. The hospital deposit was $4,200 due before they would schedule. Terrence nodded, thanked the doctor, and drove home without turning on the radio. He had run the numbers 17 times since. He picked up weekend shifts with a property management company doing walkthroughs and small repairs. He sold the last thing he owned that had any value without selling Denise's wedding ring, which had been in a ceramic dish on his nightstand since the funeral. $1,100. He did not let himself sit too long with what that meant. He was still $2,200 short. His supervisor, a man named Gary Pruitt, had laughed when Terrence asked about the company's emergency pay advance. Not cruelly, dismissively, the way people laugh at a question they consider slightly beneath them. "That's for salaried staff. Talk to payroll if you want. I wouldn't bother." So at 11:47 on a Thursday night, 12 hours into a shift, Terrence opened the internal messaging system meaning to write Sabrina Kent in payroll. The system auto-filled the name. He did not look closely enough. He told himself afterward that he was tired. It was true. It did not change anything. He arrived on the executive floor at 6:54 the next morning, still in his work clothes because there had been no time to go home. The receptionist looked at him the way people in that building sometimes did, assessing, and then recalibrating, and told him Ms. Kendall was expecting him. The office was large and spare. A long desk, 2 chairs, a wall of windows looking out over the city in gray early light. Sabrina Kendall was already seated. She did not stand. She was younger than he had expected. He had seen the lobby portrait, but photographs flatten people. In person, she had the stillness of someone who had trained herself not to waste movement. She didn't say good morning. She put a document on the desk and turned it to face him. It was his pay stub. "Look at line 7. He looked. Employee Wellness and Support Fund, $34. "I didn't sign up for that." "I know." She folded her hands. "How many people on the night crew have that same line?" Terrence thought about it. He thought about Marcus on the loading dock who complained every month that something was eating his take-home. About Darlene from housekeeping who assumed it was a tax thing and had stopped asking. About a dozen others who had mentioned it and been told by HR that it was standard. "Most of them," he said. "Maybe all of them." Sabrina sat back. Something moved behind her eyes. Not surprise. More like the confirmation of a thing she had suspected and had not wanted to be right about. "I created that fund 18 months ago," she said. "Emergency financial support for hourly employees. No mandatory contributions. Voluntary only." She paused. "According to our financial reporting, it has paid out 3 claims in 18 months and is currently sitting at just under $200,000. Terrence said nothing. He was beginning to understand why he was in the room, and the understanding was not comfortable. "The reports tell me almost nobody needs the fund," she said. "Your pay stub tells me a different story." She had transferred the advance before he walked through her door. He had not asked why. He had assumed she wanted something. Most people who did something unexpected for him wanted something. He was right. It just was not what he expected. "I need to know what's actually happening with that fund," she said. "Without alerting the people managing it, I can't get at ground-level information myself without setting off every alarm on this floor." "You can." She slid a second sheet across the desk. Not a contract. A list. Names, department states. "I'm not asking you to steal anything. I'm not asking you into any system you don't have clearance for. I'm asking you to talk to the people you work beside. Collect pay stubs if they're willing. Note anything you see on your shifts." She held his eyes. "And if this surfaces, I'll protect you." He looked back at her steadily. "You'll protect your company." "I'm the method." She did not flinch, which he respected more than an argument. "I understand why you'd see it that way. I'm telling you, I'll protect you. What you do with that is yours." He stood to go. He nearly said no. Then he thought about Darlene. 61 years old, 90 minutes on the bus each way, who had told him once without any drama at all that she had stopped filling one of her prescriptions because she could not cover it and that the fund had turned her down. She had laughed when she said it, the way people laugh at things too heavy to say plainly. Darlene did not have the chance to send a message to the wrong person. She did not have a payroll contact saved in her phone. She had a deduction on her stub and a medication she was not taking. Terrence turned back around. "I'm not doing this because you moved that money," he said. "I want that clear." Sabrina waited. "I'm doing it because those people don't have what I accidentally had last night. They can't send the wrong text to the right person." He picked his tool belt up off the chair. "That's the only reason." She nodded once. He left the way he came through the side corridor past the receptionist, who did not look up down the elevator that required no keycard. He had a shift to finish, and now apparently something else. The first thing Terrence learned was that trust moves slowly in a building where the people at the bottom have been given plenty of reasons not to extend it. He did not approach his coworkers like an investigator. He did not use that word even privately. He showed up, did his work, and paid attention. When Marcus mentioned for the 3rd time in a week that his check was short, Terrence asked whether he still had the stub. When Darlene said the fund had denied her again, Terrence asked what the denial letter looked like. He never took notes in front of anyone. He held it in his head until he reached the parking lot and wrote it down in a small notebook in his truck. Some people handed over stubs without hesitating. Others looked at him like he was wearing a wire. "You working for them now?" A man named Phil from the dock asked one evening, not joking. "I work the same shift you do," Terrence said. "I want to know whether what's happening to you is happening to everybody." Phil stared at him a long moment, then pulled a folded stub out of his back pocket. "It's happening to everybody," he said. By the end of the 2nd week, Terrence had 11 stubs. Every one carried the same deduction. Not one of those employees had signed a voluntary contribution form. Most had not known the form existed. Russell Dane had been Kendall Dynamics' chief financial officer for 9 years. 4 of them before Sabrina took over from her predecessor. He was a compact man in expensive suits who remembered the names of everyone's children and had never once in 3 years said Terrence's. He made his first move on a Wednesday. Terrence came in to find his access badge reassigned. No explanation from the shift supervisor. A new badge and new instructions. Cold storage, sublevel 2 until further notice. Sublevel 2 was where pallet equipment was staged and backup supply was managed. It was also where the number of other human beings dropped to roughly 0 after 9 at night. He understood immediately. Someone had noticed something. The ring was tightening. He messaged Sabrina through the channel. She had set up a personal email address with nothing connecting it to company servers. He told her about the reassignment. She answered within the hour. Stay in place. Don't push back. I'll explain when I can. He did not hear from her for 6 days. He saw her twice in that time, once in the corridor near the service elevator, once at the edge of a town hall while he was repairing a projector cable. Both times she looked through him. Not rudely, completely, the way executives sometimes look through a uniform. At the town hall she went further. Somebody asked about facilities reporting, and she said in front of 90 people that maintenance logs from the previous week had come back with errors and that the department was being reviewed. Terrence kept working on the cable. He had written those logs himself. There were no errors in them. Then, on a Friday afternoon, she stopped near where he was refitting a panel cover and, without looking at him, said quietly, "The reassignment came from HR at Russell's request. He told them you'd been accessing storage areas outside your zone. It isn't on paper yet, verbal only. He's watching me. He's watching both of us. Which is why..." She stopped as someone came down the corridor and started again when they were alone. "I know how this looks. I need you to hold a little longer. You told a room full of people my logs had errors." She was quiet a moment. "I did." "Did they?" "No," she said. "They didn't." He picked up his tools and moved to the next section of panel. "I just needed to know if you knew that." She walked away without answering, which was an answer. Terrence found the camera pattern by accident. He was reviewing maintenance logs for the 4th floor HVAC routine, work well inside his clearance when he noticed something repeating. Every last weekday of the month between 1 and 2 in the morning, the motion sensors on 4 registered no activity, not reduced, 0. As though the entire floor had been emptied or the sensors switched off. He cross-referenced the security camera log he could reach through building systems. Same gap every month, same 90-minute window. He pulled the server room access record. Inside those windows, one name kept appearing. A key card belonging to Derek Walsh, an employee who had left the company 11 months earlier. He sent all of it to Sabrina that night. She met him 2 evenings later on the 3rd level of the parking structure near a service door with no camera coverage. She had a folder under her arm and the look of someone who had not slept properly in a week. 3 shell companies, she said with no preamble. No employees, no physical addresses, no documented services. Over 14 months, $1.3 million moved from the Employee Support Fund into accounts those companies control. She opened the folder and turned it toward him. All authorized by one digital signature. Terrence looked at the name. He was not surprised. "He set the whole thing up inside 4 months of me announcing it," Sabrina said. She was not looking at the folder anymore. She was looking at something well past him. "I handed him a pot of money with my mother's name on it in everything but the letterhead, and he had it wired to Delaware before the first employee ever applied." "You built the fund?" Terrence said. "I built it after my mother died." She said it plainly without softening it. She was a nurse. "When my father left, she raised me on a hospital salary. She borrowed money at rates she couldn't afford because there was nowhere else to borrow it. She worked until 2 months before she died because she was afraid of what stopping would cost." Sabrina closed the folder. "I thought if I put enough money into the right system, the system would do what it was built to do. I thought that was the whole job." Terrence leaned against the wall. "A system doesn't run itself," he said. "Somebody has to stand in it." She looked at him then. Actually looked the way she had not been able to inside the building for weeks. He had his own version of what she had just described. He knew exactly what it felt like to believe that if you paid into the right things, the insurance, the fund, the correct column of the correct form, the machinery would protect the people you loved. He had paid everything he was supposed to pay and still sat in a waiting room with a magazine in his hands while his wife died 2 doors away. He did not say any of that. He thought she heard it anyway. "I heard about the ring," she said quietly. He did not respond. "I'd like to cover Lena's procedure, personally, not through the company." "No." "Terrence, I need a chance to earn what I need," he said, "not somebody with money feeling sorry for me." He was not angry. It was a fact, and he needed her to have it. She was quiet a moment. "Would you take a formal safety inspection contract? I can run it through operations. It's work that genuinely needs doing, and it pays at the proper rate." "That I'll take. I'll have it processed by end of week." They stood in the parking structure without speaking for a moment. He noticed for the first time that she carried her exhaustion the way he carried his, not in the posture or the voice, somewhere just behind the eyes where she kept everything she did not say. He had spent 3 weeks believing she was using him as a disposable source. He was still not entirely certain she was not, but she had accepted his refusal without pressure, taken his terms without negotiating them down, and told him something about her mother she had no reason to tell him. That was not the behavior of somebody who saw him only as a tool. He picked up his bag. "I'll keep my eyes open on sub-level 2. "Be careful," she said. He took the stairs down. Somewhere in the past several weeks, without him agreeing to it, the suspicion between them had turned into something else. He did not have a name for it, and was not looking for one. He noted it the way he noted anything that would need watching. Russell moved on a Tuesday. A screenshot appeared in the internal communications channel. Terrence's original message, the one he had sent by accident 3 weeks earlier, except the version circulating had been trimmed. The part about the pay stub, the unauthorized deduction, the whole reason Sabrina had answered it all, gone. What was left was a man asking the CEO for money, followed by proof that the CEO had wired him funds the same night. The story that assembled itself around those two facts was efficient and ugly. Sabrina Kendall had paid a maintenance worker to manufacture evidence against her own CFO. Terrence Boone had taken the money and become the star witness in an investigation that conveniently served his employer. By the end of the day, 3 board members had emailed the general counsel. By the next morning, an ethics inquiry was formally open, and Sabrina was instructed to have no further contact with Terrence Boone while it proceeded. Russell found him on sub-level 2 that same afternoon. He came alone, which Terrence noted, and he smiled the way people smile when they think the conversation is already finished. "I want to be straightforward with you," Russell said. "I think you got pulled into something above your pay grade by somebody who used you. I don't think that's your fault." Terrence kept working. "I'm prepared to offer you a clean exit, full payment of your daughter's medical costs, a severance package, no legal exposure, no record of any of this." He let that sit. "All I need is a written statement that Sabrina Kendall approached you, directed your activities, and authorized the transfer without your full understanding of what it meant." Terrence set down his wrench. "No." Russell's smile did not move. "I want to be sure you understand your situation. You're a single father with a pending medical crisis, no savings, and your name is attached to an open ethics investigation. That kind of thing follows a man. It affects custody determinations. It makes employers nervous." He paused. "I'm offering you a way out of all of it." "You're offering me a way into something worse," Terrence said. "I just can't see the shape of it yet." Russell looked at him a long moment, then straightened his jacket. "The offer's open until Friday." He walked back to the elevator. That evening, Sabrina messaged through the private channel. "The investigation folder is gone. Deleted off the internal server, all of it." Terrence read it, put his phone away, and finished his shift. They came for him on a Thursday. 2 internal security officers met him at the entrance to sub-level 2 at the start of his shift and asked him to come with them. Their faces were professionally neutral. He asked whether he was being detained. They said they needed him to come with them. In the HR conference room, they showed him an external hard drive that had been found in his locker. Then they showed him a printout from his bank account, an $8,000 deposit 4 days earlier from a corporate account belonging to one of Russell's shell companies. "I've never seen that drive," Terrence said. "Mr. Boone, the drive contains confidential financial records from the 4th floor server room." "I've never been in the 4th floor server room." They asked him to wait. He waited 2 hours. Then a police officer arrived, and he was no longer waiting in an HR conference room. In the back of the patrol car, Terrence did not think about the drive or the deposit or the faces of the security officers. He thought about Lena. He thought about her at home right now, probably doing homework or heating up the dinner he had left in the refrigerator, and about how she would wait for the sound of him at the door, the way she always waited. And he was not going to come through the door. He thought about Denise. He had a habit when things got very bad of holding a brief conversation with her in his head, not prayer, not exactly grief, more like calling someone you trust when you have run out of other ideas. I might have made a mistake, he told her. I thought I was doing the right thing. I'm still not sure I wasn't. The car moved through the city. He kept his back straight. It was the only thing available to him, so he did it. At the station, a duty attorney told him the company had filed a complaint for data theft and receipt of illegal funds, and that his employment was suspended without pay, effective immediately. There was also a message from his landlord time-stamped 40 minutes earlier about the rent. He was allowed one call. He used it on Lena and told her as calmly as he could that he was going to be late and that she should knock on Mrs. Patterson's door next door if she needed anything. She asked if everything was okay. He said it would be. He did not know whether that was true, but she was 12 and she needed to sleep. When the call ended, he asked whether he could send one message before the phone was taken. The attorney slid it back across the table without comment. Terrence typed quickly. He did not overthink it. You helped my daughter. I won't blame you for saving yourself. He sent it and handed the phone back. He did not expect an answer. He was not sure she could safely send one or that she had even seen it, but he needed her to know where he stood in case the morning turned out to look different from how the night felt. No reply came. He sat with that silence, which felt like its own kind of answer, even though it was not meant to be. He told himself she was quiet because she was already moving. Because it was the only thing left she could do. He wanted to believe it. He was not entirely sure he did. He leaned back against the wall and looked at the institutional clock above the door. He was tired in a way that had gone past his body. He was afraid in the quiet way that does not announce itself. Underneath all of it, something steadier held. He had not taken Russell's money. He had not signed Russell's statement. He did not know whether that would matter in the end. It was still true, and it was still his. He waited. The plea offer came on a Saturday morning, carried in by a public defender named Carol Marsh, who had kind eyes and too many files, and was clear from the first minute that she was going to tell him the truth. They're offering a misdemeanor. Unauthorized receipt of funds, no jail, suspended fine, 18 months probation, you'd be home Tuesday. The fluorescent light hummed above the narrow table. And the theft charge. Dropped, they don't want it going to discovery, too much scrutiny of their own systems. She folded her hands. Terrence, I've read what they filed. The evidence is circumstantial, but it's been packaged well. That bank transfer alone is going to be hard to explain to a jury without a counter-narrative, and right now you don't have one. If this goes to trial and it goes badly, you're looking at a felony. He nodded. He had understood that before she said it. Lena called my office this morning, Carol said. She wanted to know how to help you. He looked at the table. She's 12, Carol said gently. I know how old she is. He thought about Lena at 12. Then he thought about Lena at 22, typing her father's name into a database somewhere and finding a criminal record attached to it. A formal document saying that Terrence Boone had admitted under the weight of circumstance to a thing he had not done. He thought about what he had told her more than once in more than one context, that being broke is not a reason to give up what you know is right, that fear is not the same as guilt, that a man's name is one of the few things nobody can repossess. He picked up the pen. He held it a moment. Then he set it down. I'm not signing. Carol looked at him steadily. Can I ask why? Because I'd have to explain it to my daughter eventually. And I can't. He met her eyes. Is there anything else we can do? She was quiet. Then he told her about the logger. There's an offline backup device in the old maintenance room on sub-level 3. I installed it 3 years ago, wired to the generator log. It captures any event that draws off backup power, including instances where a primary system gets manually overridden, cameras, server room access panels. Carol looked up. It's not on the network. The generator's never been on the network. That's the whole point of a generator. He shook his head slowly. Nobody would have known to wipe it. Nobody knows it's there. I put it in during my first month and never filed the paperwork because nobody asked me to. And if it still has data, then it shows every time that server room was opened during a camera blackout, timestamps, card IDs, all of it. Carol wrote something down. I'll file a motion for independent inspection of the maintenance room. If a judge signs it today, we could be inside by Monday. He nodded. He did not let himself calculate the odds. He had made his decision based on what he could live with, not on what he could win. Whatever came next, he would meet it when it got here. One more thing, he said. Lena's procedure has to be scheduled soon. Whatever happens to me, somebody needs to make sure she gets there. I'll call Mrs. Patterson myself, Carol said. He thanked her. She gathered her files. He went back to waiting. The board convened Monday morning in the 15th floor conference room, the one with the long glass table and the view Terrence had only ever seen while replacing a ceiling panel 3 floors above it. Russell Dane arrived early and laid out his materials with the care of a man who had rehearsed, printed copies for every member. A summary on the screen, a timeline that began with an unsolicited message from a maintenance worker to the CEO and ended with stolen financial records in that worker's locker. He spoke for 22 minutes. He was composed, precise, and entirely convincing. When he finished, the board chair thanked him and asked whether there were any further statements before deliberation. The door opened. Sabrina Kendall came in without an assistant and without a lawyer, carrying a laptop in one manila folder. She was dressed the way she dressed every day, nothing performative about it. She pulled out the chair at the far end of the table and sat down. "I was asked not to be here," she said. "I'm here anyway." The chair frowned. "Ms. Kendall, the terms of your administrative leave—" "I understand the terms." She opened the laptop. "I'll be brief, then you can decide whether what I've brought changes anything." She did not look at Russell. She did not need to. 18 months ago, I created the Employee Wellness and Support Fund in memory of my mother. I want to be honest with this board about a failure of judgment, not the transfer to Mr. Boone, which I stand behind. My belief that a good policy once written would enforce itself. I read the reports. The report said everything was working. I never went downstairs and asked the people the fund was built for whether they agreed. She turned the laptop toward them. On Friday evening, a court-authorized inspection of the maintenance room on sublevel 3 recovered an offline backup device wired to the building's emergency generator. It logs every event that draws off backup power, including manual overrides of primary systems. It has never been connected to our network, which is why it is the only record in this building nobody thought to delete. She advanced a slide. 26 instances over 14 months in which the 4th floor security cameras were disabled and the server room was accessed using a deactivated key card belonging to a former employee. She advanced again. Each of those 26 corresponds precisely to a date on which funds moved from the employee support account to one of 3 companies. She slid the manila folder toward the chair. The independent audit is in there. The companies have no employees, no offices, and no documented services. The authorizing signature belongs to Russell Dane. She closed the laptop. Additionally, the $8,000 that appeared in Mr. Boone's account has been traced to an account Mr. Dane controls through a third-party LLC. Mr. Boone never withdrew or accessed it. The transfer used banking details taken from Mr. Boone's payroll advance application, information the chief financial officer had access to, and I did not. She looked at the board for the first time with the full weight of what she had come to say. He didn't set Terrence Boone up because Terrence was a threat. He set him up because Terrence was the easiest person in this building to make look guilty. He picked a man with no savings, no connections to this floor, and nobody up here willing to speak for him. The room was very quiet. Russell said, "This is—" "I'm not finished," not loudly, finally. She gave the chair a moment with the first page of the audit. "I failed the people in this building by trusting a system I never verified. That's mine, and I'll answer for it however this board decides. But I will not sign a document that puts what Russell Dane did onto Terrence Boone's record. Not today, and not after today." She stood. "That's all I have." She left the folder on the table, picked up her laptop, and walked out. Russell Dane was escorted from the building by 2 officers from the city's financial crimes unit before noon. 3 managers in HR and finance who had helped delete the internal investigation files were terminated and referred for separate review. The board voted in closed session to reinstate Sabrina Kendall effective immediately and to commission a full independent audit of all fund activity going back 30 months. Terrence was released that afternoon. By the time he got home, there was a letter from legal waiting in his email. An apology, back pay for the suspension, reimbursement of legal costs, a formal statement confirming that the deposit into his account was fraudulent and had been reversed. He read it standing in his kitchen, still wearing the clothes he had left the house in on Thursday. Then he washed his face, heated the dinner he had not been there to make, and called Lena in from her room. 2 weeks later, Sabrina offered him the job. She laid it out the way she laid everything out. A newly created role overseeing employee safety systems and benefits administration. Direct report to the executive team, a real salary, a seat on the fund's new review committee alongside 3 elected worker representatives. "You've built this before," she said. "You just didn't have the title." He looked at the letter and thought about all the things this could be other than what it appeared to be. A consolation. A gesture. Optics. "Tell me honestly, is this because of what happened?" She didn't hesitate. "The job needed to exist before I knew your name. I couldn't see that until somebody showed me where to look." She paused. "That isn't flattery. It's an accurate description of how I failed and what I'm trying to fix." He thought about Phil handing him a folded stub in a parking lot. Darlene on the bus 90 minutes each way. Some woman he had never met 4 years from now, submitting a request to a fund that might actually answer her. "I'll take it," he said. She put out her hand. He shook it. "One condition," he added. "I keep a night shift walkthrough, once a week minimum. I want to stay visible to the people down there." She considered it for exactly 1 second. "Put it on your schedule." Lena's surgery was on a Thursday. Terrence sat in the waiting room for 3 hours and 14 minutes. He didn't pick up a magazine. He watched the clock, drank bad coffee, and answered one work email which he felt guilty about immediately, and closed. Sabrina arrived 40 minutes in. She did not announce herself. She found him in the row of chairs by the window and sat down 2 seats over, close enough to be present, far enough not to presume. "You don't have to stay," he said. "I know." They sat a long while without talking, the way people do when talking is not the thing that is needed. When the surgeon came out and said it had gone well, Terrence nodded and thanked him and sat back down and said nothing for a while. Sabrina did not fill the silence. He was grateful for that. 4 months later, Lena played in the school winter showcase, her first since the surgery. Her first since the world came back open on her left side the way light comes back after a long outage, suddenly, completely as though it had never been gone. Piano. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. She did not make a single mistake, which Terrence knew because he had heard her practice that piece roughly 200 times in 8 weeks and could have played it himself by then. He sat in the 3rd row. Sabrina sat beside him. When it ended and the applause was settling, Lena looked out from the stage with the expression of somebody who had just done the thing she had been afraid she could not do anymore. She found her father's face. Then she saw who was next to him. She had met Sabrina twice. She had not asked many questions, which meant she had drawn her own conclusions and found them acceptable. Lena smiled. Terrence exhaled. "Do you remember the message?" he said. He did not have to say which one. Sabrina was quiet a moment. In the row ahead, a family was gathering coats and programs. On stage, students were taking their bows. "I think you sent it to exactly the right person," she said. "We both just needed some time to work that out." He did not answer. There was nothing to add. On stage, Lena stepped into the light for her final bow, and the room filled again with the sound of people who were glad they had shown up. Terrence was among them. For the first time in longer than he had let himself measure, that was enough. Terrence never set out to change anything. He refused to stop being himself while everything around him was built to make him feel like less. That is the thing about dignity. It does not need a title or a bank balance to keep its shape. It needs somebody willing to hold on to it while they are afraid. And Sabrina had the resources, the platform, and the power. It still took one accidental text from a man she had never spoken to before. She could see what her own system was doing to the people inside it. Real leadership is not writing the right policy. It is still asking long after the policy is written whether it is actually reaching the people it was written for. If this story stayed with you, send it to someone who might need it today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. New stories every week about ordinary people making hard choices when it would have been so much easier not to.